fireplaces, songs on the guitar, and the promise of the best summer of your life. The camp is a place of trust, isn't it? A place where monitors are their protectors, almost heroes. But what if the most beloved monitor, the one who knows all, the trails and tells the best stories, were the real monster who lives in the forest? In the camp is Vale das Shadow. The kids loved Uncle Arthur. They just didn't know that every summer he wasn't there to take care of them. He was there too. Harvest. Today, I will tell you the terrifying story of the Echo Collector. A legend that has become too real for a group of children in darkness. Stay with me and find out why sometimes the biggest danger is not in the dark of the forest, but in the smile of those you think you can trust. The wooden plate, carved with letters that were once happy and inviting, now seemed to scowl at the entrance of the dirt road. Campo Valley of the Shadows. The name, which once promised youthful adventures under the treetops, now whispered old secrets and boundary riots. For the group of preteens that jumped from the dusty van, the summer excitement drowned out any feeling. It was a rite of passage, a dive into supervised independence, and the figure that awaited them with open arms seemed the embodiment of safety and fun. Uncle Arthur, with her wide smile, hair disheveled by the sun, and a guitar hanging on her back. Arthur was the image of the perfect camp monitor. He knew every trail, every bird by his corner, and had an infinite reserve of bonfire stories and dull jokes that somehow always laughed. The children loved him. Leo, the oldest of the group, with his 12 years and a pose of those who already knew everything, saw in Arthur a model to follow. Mia, a 10-year-old girl with a fertile imagination and a drawing notebook, always, had already immortalized him on several pages, portraying him as a hero of the woods. And the 9-year-old twins, Pedro and Paulo, followed him like ducklings, amazed at his magic tricks and his ability to find the best places for a dive in Rio. The first days in the Valley of the Shadows were the mornings were filled with the smell of dew and coffee, followed by scavenger hunts, treasury fighters, and classes on how to make a bonfire without smoke. The afternoons were passed by the lake, the cold water a relief welcome to the summer heat. The nights, however, brought a subtle change in the atmosphere. The sky, splashed with stars, seemed vast and indifferent. The forest, which during the day was a playground of discoveries, turned into a maze of indecipherable shadows and sounds. It was at these times that the stories of Uncle Arthur around the fire gained a different tone. He spoke of ancient forest spirits, creatures that mimicked human voices to attract the unwary to darkness. The children were nestled in each other, the wide eyes oscillating between the brightness of the flames and the impenetrable darkness around them. Arthur laughed, stroking the head of one or the other, saying they were just legends to scare the most fearful. But there was a glow in his eyes, an almost sadistic pleasure in observing the fear flourishing in young faces, which a more attentive observer would have found disturbing. Meanwhile, 200 kilometers away, in the gray, pulsating city, Detective Ishmael drank what was left of her cold coffee. His table, in the most forgotten corner of the police station, was a pile of archived case files, an endless stories cemetery. Ishmael was a man haunted by one of these open files, the disappearance of a girl. Years ago, in a small town in the countryside, the case was never resolved, and the image of the child's pink dress found on the edge of a river was a ghost who visited him on sleepless nights. His boss, a practical man who mediates the success in statistics, threw a new folder over his table. "One more," he said bluntly. "Teenager. He ran away from home, probably. Routine thing." The name on the cover of the file was Daniel, 16 years. The photo showed a boy with a challenging smile, but with eyes that kept an early melancholy. Ishmael flowered the pages without much interest. The mother, in her statement, insisted that he would not escape, that he loved his family, despite the typical age. The last time he had been seen, He said he was going to camp with friends. No one knew where. Back in the Valley of the Shadows, things started to change more tangibly. Small personal effects of campers began to disappear. Leo's Boy Scout knife, a gift from his grandfather, the Mia Moon pendant, nothing of value, only items with sentimental meaning. Uncle Arthur shrugged, blaming the thieves of the forest. But one day, Paul, one of the twins, returned crying from the trail. He and Peter were playing hide and seek, and Peter had disappeared. Panic settled in the camp. Uncle Arthur organized the search, his calm voice and holds an anchor in the storm of fear that was formed. He shared the children into groups, a tactic that Leo, now feeling the weight of responsibility, found it strange. "We should not separate," he murmured to Mia, who agreed with his head, his face pale. Arthur scolded them kindly. "Let's cover more terrain like that. Peter can't have gone away." The searches extended in the afternoon and early evening. Peter's name echoed through the forest, a desperate supplication that was swallowed by the immensity of the trees. It was Mia, with his artist eyes, who noticed something strange. In a tree near where Peter was last seen, there was a symbol carved in the shell, a circle with a spiral inside. She drew him in her notebook, a feeling of cold by walking through her spine. The search was closed when the darkness became total. The children were collected to the main cabin, the heavy silence broken only by Paul's sobs. Uncle Arthur tried to stay calm, but there was a tension in his smile, a stiffness in his shoulders that wasn't there before. He promised that they would find Pedro in the morning. That night, Leo couldn't sleep. The image of the symbol that Mia had shown him haunted him. He remembered having seen something similar before in one of the old books Uncle Arthur kept in his private cabin, a place that was strictly forbidden to children. Impelled by courage that he did not know he had, he stained out of the dorm and ran, his heart hammering his ribs toward Arthur's cabin. The door, as always, was locked, but Leo remembered a loose window in the back. With a little effort, he managed to open it and slide in. The air in the cabin was muffled, with a strange smell of damp land and something more, something metallic and sweet. There were maps scattered around the table, maps of the camp region, with several points marked with the same spiral symbol, and in a corner, semi-covered by a blanket, something that made Leo's blood freezing. A small bunch of remembered land, and leaving it, a piece of blue, too familiar blue fabric. It was the shirt Peter was wearing. Terror, pure and absolute, took over Leo. He was no longer in a summer camp. It was in the Forling's lab. Meanwhile, Detective Ishmael, following a fragile track, arrived in a dusty town not far from the Valley of Shadows. Daniel's disappearance had led him to investigate other similar cases in the region over the years. Young people who disappeared without traces. Local authorities always classified them as escapes, cases closed. But Ishmael saw a pattern, and the pattern led him to a dusty library, where a lady with cunning eyes, the local librarian, listened to her story with worrying familiarity. "The Lord is not the first to ask these questions," she said, her voice a whisper. She led him to a section of old files, newspapers for time, and there Ishmael found stories of missing children who dated decades, and in the midst of them, a local legend, the legend of the Echo Collector, an entity that, with each summer solstice, emerged from the forest to bring you to youth, to feed on its laughter and vitality. The stories were vague, folkloric, but the description of where the collector allegedly inhabited was accurate. A valley surrounded by rocks, with a river that ran in its center. The Valley of the Shadows. The librarian also gave him a name, the name of the former owner of Camplands, an eccentric man who had mysteriously disappeared years ago, leaving only a diary full of critical notes and designs of a spiral symbol. His name was Arthur. Leo ran back to the dorm, the panic giving way to a cold determination. He woke up Mia, his confidant, and together they woke up the others. The story he told, whispered in the darkness, was so terrible that some refused to believe. But fear was palpable, and Peter's absence was irrefutable proof. They were alone, stuck with a monster. The plan was simple and desperate. They needed to escape, but the main road was the most obvious way. Uncle Arthur, or whatever he was, would be waiting. The only other way out was through the forest, an ancient and poorly signposted trail that led to the neighboring city. It was dangerous, but it was the only chance. They moved like shadows, each crack of a branch sounding like thunder in their ears. The forest now was an enemy. The trees seemed to squirm in grotesque shapes, and every gust of wind seemed to whisper Peter's name. Mia, with her notebook in hand, was identifying the spiral symbols they found along the way, as if they were poisoned breadcrumbs left by the hunting monster. They were not alone for long. A melodic whistle cut the silence of the night. The melody of a lullaby that Uncle Arthur used to sing. He was coming. The persecution began. The children ran, the air burning in their lungs, the fear giving them a speed they did not know to have. Arthur did not run. He walked, his calm and methodical step, the whistle never faltering. He knew that forest like the palm of his hand. He was the forest, Ishmael, with the urgency of a man who finally found the missing piece in his puzzle. Drove at high speed along the dirt road leading to the camp. The image of the pink dress and the smiling face of Daniel merged into his mind. He was no longer just investigating a case. He was on a rescue mission, an attempt to redeem his past failures. The children came to a clearing. In the center was an old oak, its twisted roots like the fingers of a sleeping giant, and at the foot of the tree, a small altar of stones. About him, Leo's Boy Scout knife, the Mia pendant, and other small treasures of the missing children. And next door, a newly engaged grave. Uncle Arthur emerged from the shadows, his smile now a mask of madness. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his soft voice contrasting with insanity in his eyes. "This is a sacred place, a place of renewal." He was not just a bad man. He was something older, something that fed on the essence of youth to prolong his own unnatural existence. The camp was his pantry, the children, his harvest. The confrontation was a blur of shouts and despair. Leo, using the only weapon he had, his intelligence, began to scream, make noise, trying to break Arthur's control aura. Mia, in an act of challenge, played her drawing notebook on the fire of the fire that Arthur had lit. The images of the hero she once admired, writhing and disappearing. In the flames, it was the sound of tires singing on the dirt road that broke the spell. The lights of a car flooded the clearing, blinding momentarily to all. The door opened, and Detective Ishmael left, the gun in hand. "Stopped," he shouted, his voice to a man who had nothing more to lose. Arthur, caught by surprise, hesitated, and that hesitation was all the children needed. They dispersed, running in all directions, the chaos breaking the order of Arthur's ritual. Ishmael advanced, the fixed eyes in the figure that now seemed less human. Another maximum shadow against the light of the headlights. What followed was not a fight between a policeman and a criminal. It was a battle against something that did not belong to this world. Arthur moved at an inhuman speed and strength, his fingers like claws, his eyes shining with a cold, old light. Ishmael shot. The sound of the shot echoed through the forest, a modern and brutal sound in a place of ancient evil. The creature that one day out, Arthur staggered, a howl of pain and fury escaping from his lips. He stumbled back to the darkness of the forest, the light of the headlights revealing, for a moment, a face that was a collage of features, the echoes of the children he had taken over the years. When the sun was born, the forest was silent. The Vale das Shadow camp has been closed, the empty cabins now a monument at a summer of terror. The children were returned to their families, traumatized but alive. Arthur's body was never found. The grave at the foot of the oak was empty. Detective Ishmael, in his report, wrote what he could. A case of kidnapping, a missing and presumably dead suspect. But he knew the truth. He knew that the evil that inhabited the Shadow Valley had not been destroyed. It was just asleep, waiting next summer, the next harvest, and in his office next. To Daniel's case file, now closed, he kept a small drawing notebook, recovered from the ashes of the bonfire. On the chain-escated pages, a drawing of a man with a guitar on his back. The hero of a girl, now a dark reminder that the most terrible dangers are those who hide behind a smile where we least expect it. And that some shadows once found never make us really. They just wait at night to fall. And so, silence returned to the Valley of the Shadows. The camp was closed. The children were rescued. But the story is not over. Detective Ishmael knew, and deep down, each of those children also knew. The body was never found. Evil was not destroyed. It just backed down to the shadows, waiting. The echo collector didn't die. He's out there, ... Maybe looking for a new valley, a new camp, a new name. The real question this story leaves is, ... How many summer bonfires are there, hiding an old hunger? How many friendly smiles are, in fact, masks? The Shadow Valley lesson is terrifying and simple. The real danger rarely announces its arrival. The world is full of stories like this, hidden in dark corners and forgotten whispers. If you have the courage to keep exploring these places with me, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because the darkness has many secrets to tell, and you won't want to lose next. Leave your like if this story made you a little more attentive to what hides in the night, and comment down here. What is the place that always gave you goosebumps? I see you in the next account, ... where we will find that sometimes the monster is not in the forest, but across the wall of your room.